It's my nerd world, and welcome to it, a Star Wars show. On this week's episode, why, in my opinion, Star Wars desperately needs a singular vision, plus a lot of fantastic listener feedback this week. As always, if you want to find out more about Star Wars, my nerd world, my EMBARK science fiction space opera series, and the other podcasts that I host, head on over to mynerdworld.net.
Nothing will stand in our way.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
I will finish what you started.
Who are you? I'm no one.
There are stories about what happened.
It's true. All of it.
The Force. It's calling to you.
My nerd world.
Just let it in.
It is my nerd world, a Star Wars show. I am your host, Jon Justice, and I am glad you're here for another episode where we talk about all things a galaxy far, far away. If you haven't seen the video essay series on YouTube, Movies with Mikey, I would absolutely encourage you to go and check it out. My father was visiting me this week. Fantastic to see my dad and my stepmom in visiting as they've been traveling over the summer, and had the opportunity to wipe out on several of the Movie with Mikey's Star Wars episodes. He has quite a few. He does video essays for the trilogies. He does deep dives into how we view Star Wars. He has a recent one talking about the sequel trilogy and more specifically the Rise of Skywalker, one about The Force Awakens as well. I would really encourage you to go and check out Movies with Mikey, his feed on YouTube. He does all types of movies, but his Star Wars video essays are absolutely spectacular, and I cannot recommend them enough. While I was watching it, though, something stuck into my head, and it's been top of mind for me on a number of different levels with the changes that have been happening in my life, with the passing of my dear friend Drew, changes with the radio show that I'm hosting, and watching these video essays, getting into Star Wars again after taking a bit of a break while I was going through my open heart surgery recovery. I began to realize something. And it's what I want to spend just a little bit of time on for the main topic this week before we dive into listener feedback, because we have a lot of great commentary from you this week that I really want to spend some time on. I really believe that Star Wars desperately needs a singular vision. I made this argument a while back around the Last Jedi era, doing that thing with my fingers, as it related to Rian Johnson. And I thought that Rian Johnson would have made, I don't think it'll happen now, but I think Rian Johnson would have made for a very good content creator, storyteller, to drive a series of singular stories or a singular story arc for Star Wars. I know that this is probably never going to happen, certainly not in the live action realm, but we can look to live action as a good example of that. One of the reasons why I think The Mandalorian worked so well is the driving force of Jon Favreau. Now, Jon Favreau was also behind the Book of Boba Fett. I wasn't the biggest fan of the Book of Boba Fett, mostly just because of the story that was told, not so much the storytelling. I thought the storytelling was fine. I had issues, much like I do with Kenobi, with regard to the production of the Book of Boba Fett and how things just seemed very small in scale, especially getting down to those final episodes. Kenobi was a different ballgame. The production in and of itself just felt thin. And I've discussed that enough already on the show. I'm not going to go down that road again. That being said, I think Kenobi also suffered because we've got a director who is using somebody else's script, who is writing that script based off of other scripts. And I think the content suffers because of that. Kevin Feige is a good example of the success up until this recent phase, which I think has been floundering, in my opinion, when it comes to the MCU. But when you look at the first 10 years of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it's been pretty spot on, and I think that's largely due to Kevin Feige. That doesn't mean you can't have other writers come in and write stories, but it does mean that you need a driving force who is sort of the end-all, be-all of the storytelling, who can kind of give final say. We needn't only look at what a mess America is right now and use that as an example as well. In my opinion, the country right now is being run by committee, not by a single individual who is making the decisions and pushing forward a vision for what the country should be. They're more of a conduit, in my opinion. That's as political as I'm going to get on the show. Again, I don't see this happening in live action. I think in live action, you're going to see a lot of different writers. You're going to see a lot of different individuals come in to give their spin on Star Wars. It'll be run through the story group. That being said, when we return to cinematic storytelling for Star Wars, I would really like to see one person at the helm who is driving the narrative. I would prefer that person to actually be the writer of the stories in and of themselves. I think that movie franchises and trilogies really do benefit when you either have a singular writer writing all the stories, or you have a director who is helming the series of movies, perhaps with different writers, still putting their stamp and vision on the product. Dave Filoni could fill that role, in my opinion, of a George Lucas. And personally, that's why I think the storytelling for the prequels, even though people had a hard time with the filmmaking part of it, and certainly the original trilogy, ended up benefiting as greatly as they did and were such fantastic stories, was because George Lucas, at the end of the day, had final say in all of this. Right now, it just feels like there's too many cooks in the kitchen. And it's a byproduct of how things are created these days. But I really do hope that Star Wars finds an individual who is willing to commit. And Kathleen Kennedy alluded to this recently in talking about the creation of future content and how an individual really needs to devote like 5 years of their lives to go and create a particular Star Wars project. I wish that they were able to go and hire somebody who could just be the singular vision to replace the George Lucas factor and be the driving force to go and give final say on the storytelling. It's always going to be a struggle for whomever owns Star Wars. You assume Disney's going to own it forever, but you never know. It's always going to be a struggle for whoever owns the Star Wars IP because they don't have George Lucas anymore. And George Lucas really was Star Wars. Without George Lucas, you can get good storytelling and you can get fantastic content, but it's always going to be more difficult because the ideas were born from one particular individual who's no longer directly involved in that storytelling. So it's going to be different, and it's going to change. But I'm fearful that we're going to have more content put out by Disney and Lucasfilm that is content created by committee. And I personally think that would be a huge, huge mistake. And again, I think that we've seen a few examples of that. And in my opinion, Kenobi is probably one of the best examples. I just get a feeling when it comes to Kenobi that the individuals who created that show, while talented, weren't steeped enough in Star Wars to get the job done to 100% satisfaction. And what concerns me is when you see a movie like Thor: Love and Thunder, which, in my opinion, did not land very well at all, and Taika Waititi, who is going to be helming a Star Wars film and maybe the next Star Wars film. And if you didn't hear the news, he had asked Natalie Portman at one point in time, would you ever consider being in a Star Wars movie? To which Natalie Portman responded, I was in the prequels. And you kind of scratch your head and go, dude, how How did you not know that? And if you're not that familiar, you don't have to like them, but if you're not that familiar with the prequels to remember that Natalie Portman played Luke's mom, Padme Amidala, in those films, I don't care what era of Star Wars you're writing in, how familiar are you with the source material? It'll be fascinating to see where Star Wars goes over the course of the next 10 years, and certainly with the resurgence of moviegoers heading to the box office again, and a lot of commentary around a pending collapse of streaming services, what type of content we end up getting in the future when it comes to Star Wars. I think if you had asked people a couple of months ago what the future of Star Wars is going to be, as a matter of fact, there were articles written about this. They would have said it's all going to be online, TV, streaming. I think that dynamic is changing rapidly. I think there is a shift going on right now within the pop culture social sphere in America where people are wanting to get out more and maybe getting a little bit burned out on having so many options via the streaming services. And I still, to this day, will contend that Star Wars, in my opinion, is best served on the big screen with thematic storytelling over a number of movies. What do you think? TalkShowNerd@gmail.com, TalkShowNerd@gmail.com, or, as always, you can leave a comment up on YouTube if you happen to be checking the show out on that platform. All right, let's get to your listener feedback.
I need someone to show me my place in all this.
I had a dream last night that I interviewed Daisy Ridley. I know why I did. I was on Instagram, and if you don't know, Daisy Ridley has been active on Instagram again, and she posted something the other day. I can't remember what it was. So it was just top of mind, and we were watching those movies with Mikey's videos that I was mentioning before. And so, yeah, I had this dream last night that I was interviewing Daisy Ridley. And it wasn't going very well. I kept getting interrupted, and I was very frustrated. Anyway, Javier writes, "Hey, John, glad you're back, safe and healthy. Star Wars is not the same without you. Thank you very much. All right, Kenobi. I have to say it wasn't what I was expecting. Overall was good, great moments, but there was something missing. Ewan's performance was outstanding, the best so far. I agree with your past comment that they should have released all the episodes at the same time. At this very moment, I'd prefer having a 2.5-hour movie than these 6 episodes. The problem was my expectation. They were too high. Sometimes I feel like they shouldn't have done any more movies about the Skywalker saga. But then I watch Rogue One, and I say I want more. I don't know. I'm confused. We'll see what happens with Andor. I need to lower my expectations so it won't hurt if it sucks. I think, look, at the end of the day, it just comes down to good storytelling. I think you can continue to tell Skywalker stories. It just depends on the storytelling. If it's a good story and it's executed well, then it kind of doesn't matter what era or what stories that you are telling. Now, I have high hopes for Andor. I have high hopes for Andor because they've been working on it for a really long time. Tony Gilroy, who came in and did the final remix cut, whatever you want to call it, of Rogue One, is at the helm of it. It's not all done on the volume. They did location shooting. And back to my original point, they've had a long time to work on this. And the fact that they greenlit that so early on tells me they had a good story to tell. And based off of how popular Rogue One is, as it kind of continues to emerge as the fan favorite of the Disney era of Star Wars films, I think they know they need to nail it, and I'm getting the sense that they did. I'm keeping my expectations high for Andor, and we don't have to wait very long to find out how it's going to be as it gets released last month. And apparently the way that they're breaking it down is over a long time frame, over a number of years. The directors of the film all have a set number of episodes that they're directing that'll represent a chunk of time. This could potentially be the Game of Thrones doing that thing with my fingers format of Star Wars storytelling that I have wanted from the get-go since we first heard about there being Star Wars shows, live-action shows for streaming. I want something that's epic and grand that spans a long period of time like Game of Thrones. Friend of the show, Howard, writes, first of all, I hope your recovery is still going well. It is. Getting a little better every day. Throwing a little YouTube noise while I work, I came across this video about how many edits, big edits to the first Star Wars movie there was before it's released in 1977. Yep. While some of the stuff I knew, there were many things I didn't know, such as how far they had to move some scenes around from what was originally put together and reusing some footage with added voiceovers. There was a ton of edits for the original Star Wars, to the point where they were editing down to the final frame of certain shots. As a matter of fact, one story that I like from the Empire of Dreams documentary, one of the best documentaries when it comes to Star Wars, was when Luke is attacked by the Tusken Raider, and he falls on his back, and there's a camera shot up at the Tusken Raider, and he has the gaffy stick in his hand, and he goes, and he shakes it. Because they were at the end of the frame, the last frame of that shot, they actually rocked the frame back and forth to get that Tusken Raider to push the gaffy stick up and down. Howard goes on to say, it got me thinking about how you've talked about your first book edits. This is not such a bad thing, as it can help move the story along better. Since I've only read the first edition of EMBARK, this makes me want to go and reread it to see how it changed. These are just reminders to me that it's okay to make changes in order to make things better, which is good for me since I felt I've been stuck in a rut lately. So thank you. Even if you were only indirectly part of this reminder, we all learn from each other. Anyways, hope you had a great birthday. Thank you very much, and may the force be with you. Yeah, I did. EMBARK Book 1 is on its 4th edit. Not only did I send it back out to my editor for a complete copy edit, which I hadn't done originally. So the original version of the book really was just a proofread edit for grammar. I gave it back to my editor, and she did a full copy edit, which changed quite a bit of the writing in and of itself and made it better. Plus, I took out a huge chunk of the story, moved it to a prologue, and trimmed out quite a bit at the first third of the book in order to get it to move faster, and added in just some minor elements. So, much like Howard, if you got EMBARK Book 1 early on and perhaps thought it was too slow or had some issues with the pacing or even the writing, I would hope that you would go and check out the most recent edition, as I feel like it is the best version of the book so far. And as a matter of fact, if you purchased the original book, and especially the original version, because actually the formatting was more like an article and not like a novel, if you reach out to me, I have extra copies. I might be willing to toss one your way free of charge, depending on the circumstance. So let me know. Drop me an email, talkshownerd@gmail.com. If you've supported my writing, I have no problem giving out some promo copies of the most recent edition. If you want a hardback, or sending an ebook version your way, that's a really easy thing to do as well. And for those that are new listeners to the show, I'll talk a bit more in detail about my books coming up at the end of this episode. All right, let's get to Spacey. Has a fantastic, lengthy email that I want to share with you. Longtime listener, first-time caller. I discovered it after watching The Rise of Skywalker in theaters and needed a break from the social media / news cycle feedback loop of harsh critique for the film, which I loved. I love The Rise of Skywalker so much. I really do. I enjoy tuning into the show for the generally positive takes on Star Wars, and I appreciate the critique and scrutiny. The fact that Star Wars draws from so many genres, swashbuckling tales like Three Musketeers, Count of Monte Cristo, samurai films, westerns by John Ford, Sergio Leone, science fiction serials, and even mafia and crime films like The Godfather, which George Lucas worked on as an editor for the mattress sequence. Basically, there are a myriad of ways and countless perspectives to look at Star Wars through and enjoy it as entertainment, while at the same time being able to pick it apart to compare and contrast. And heck, be happy and disappointed with Star Wars content from a certain point of view. Which brings me to Obi-Wan Kenobi. I will bring up my own bias that I have long held. I saw The Phantom Menace in theaters twice back in May 1999, and while I enjoyed the experience as a whole, it was also head-scratchingly disappointing for two major reasons. The deaths, or so we thought at the time, of my two favorite characters in the film, Darth Maul and Qui-Gon. So soured was I by their demise, I didn't watch episodes 2 and 3 until years later on home video. Being aesthetically minded and able to distinguish on a preternatural, a preternatural level between the film and digital, maybe totally pronouncing that wrong, physical sets and green screen or blue screen composites, it was very recently difficult for me to separate the tales told in Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith and the way they were being told, meaning the storytelling lumbered under the weight of the cumbersome technology. Speaking of cumbersome, so was my reading of your fantastic email, which was advanced at the time but feels as plasticky now as it did then. Coupled with the over-the-top performances, the best I have for them is that they are the most B-moviest movies ever made. I love B-movies, so that's high praise. But Star Wars at its best is always reaching for more and simultaneously actually grabbing onto what it's reaching for. But now with Obi-Wan Kenobi and its integration of technology to better serve storytelling, particularly during shooting, actors on sets with backdrops that they can see instead of imagine, and with the pace and approach of TV filmmaking versus film, which are different processes. And now, after having watched the series in full, coupled with the anticipation of Season 2, this has been nothing short of a complete course correction for me and my strained relationship with the prequels, and to a certain extent with Obi-Wan and the character as a whole. Art, again, is subjective, as you said many times. Another way of putting it is love. And no one can tell you what you must love or not love someone or something if you don't. Yep. And while I wouldn't say I love the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, I enjoyed it immensely. The way it was presented in terms of cinematography and production design reminded me of Rogue One and Solo meets The Mandalorian and hints of A New Hope. Through that lens, it felt right to me. The final episode locked this all in. And also, I've heard of a fan theory that each episode in the series corresponds to the first 6 episodes of the Skywalker saga. I don't know if you've heard that theory. I have. It's pretty interesting because it does correlate very well. It tracks. It felt like all the threads tied into one satisfying whole, and we got all the fan servicey things served on a platter. Vader and Obi-Wan lightsaber battle in beast mode. Obi-Wan using the Force to extricate himself from being buried alive and using what was thrown his way as a means of taking down Vader. Anakin peering through the helmet and his duality, even splitting of his voice between machine and man, saying that Obi-Wan didn't kill Anakin, he did. Owen and Beru protecting the homestead. Reva's struggles and her ultimate redemption. Obi-Wan meeting Luke and letting us fill in the gaps of their interaction and that utterance of hello there. Everything about Leia. Her wearing the holster from Tala, the final interaction between her and Obi-Wan, the Leia theme that makes me cry every time. Qui-Gon, that was short and sweet and the perfect chef's kiss ending leading into the next adventure of Season 2. I'll wrap this up for now. What I love most about your podcast is the positivity. Obviously, we all have our moments, and my escape from our own dark hours, so to speak, has often been your show. Thank you. I'm not saying you have a responsibility to your audience in terms of censoring yourself, far from it. Just know that you have a tremendous amount of power and influence, both when you feel positive and when you feel negative. But you're not alone. I'm learning this too. Thanks again for the great content and for reading this. It means a lot, Spacey. Thank you, Spacey, for taking the time to write such a lengthy and poignant and relevant email to me. And truth be told, for as much criticism as I've given Obi-Wan Kenobi, guess what I've been watching lately? Or rewatching? Obi-Wan Kenobi. All right. Howard writes again. I got caught up on Kenobi in the podcast. You don't sound like a toxic fan. Even someone who just says they like the legends better than the sequels does not sound like a toxic fan. That is reserved for those who spout out things like George Lucas ruined my childhood and not my Star Wars. You're just giving an honest critique of what you liked and didn't like. I agree that Kenobi felt so much like a TV show. I enjoyed the overall story and the actors were all great, but I agree they could have worked harder on the production quality. I could go into more details on where I agree and disagree with you, but I continue to enjoy your take on it. Saving the best for last, though, happy birthday. I hope you have many, many more. I appreciate the podcast. It's nice to hear a perspective on someone close to my age on all things Star Wars and even Depeche Mode. Yes. Thank you very much, Howard. I appreciate it. And you're all friends of the show. Irene Davis writes in, I have to be totally honest, I was appalled at the movies like Thor, Doctor Strange, and certainly Jurassic Park. Again, the godlike adoration of the directors. No. Now, to Disney and its new Disney era, yes, it will be different, but still so much better than the MCU. Going back to the last 3 films, the potential was and is immense. Characters like Rey and Kylo should have been the center, complete center, with the dyad the main focus instead of a little bit. Storytelling is everything, and if you had stuck these two alone on an island, the exotic and erotic, tension portrayed and acted by these two has no equal. So anything after is going to go flat. I want good directors, not zany and trendy ones, that are able to set up the feels and emotions in an audience and the wonder and the magic and escapism. Not stuff like Aquaman 2, which I already know will be in the same vein. We need the magic back of a leading hero and a leading lady in a blockbuster at least. Come on, Disney, you can do this. There's a percentage of so-called Star Wars fans that will always be toxic, and we regular bread and butter fan base want some magic. Keep the zaniness for the cartoons, but give us something that we can sink our teeth into and not something that truly insults our intelligence by watching something that's been cobbled together for bucks and a shareholder. You know, it is something that I appreciate so much about the sequel trilogy, and that is when you compare them to the movies, especially the most recent movies that we've gotten in terms of blockbusters, whether it's Jurassic World, Dominion, Thor, Love and Thunder, Spider-Man No Way Home to a certain extent, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. I still love the way that the movies are, for the most part, very simple, straightforward storytelling. It's one of the brilliant things about A New Hope. One of the things that I aspired to do in my EMBARK book. While it's a book and there's a lot more details in it, I just wanted it to be a good, simple, good versus evil, freedom and liberty versus tyranny story. And the simplicity of the MacGuffin of the Death Star plans and Luke and Darth Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi and A New Hope just strikes such a fantastic chord. It's one of the reasons why I believe that Top Gun Maverick is such a success. From the very beginnings of the movie, once you get the setup, about 15, 20 minutes in, here's the objective and here's what we have to do and let's tell our story. And that simple type of storytelling has been missing in so many of our major motion pictures, especially within the MCU. Star Wars doesn't need to get bogged down in dense storytelling and a bunch of characters. I think it does its best with simple, solid, beginning, middle, and end, good versus evil storytelling. Friend of the show, Miranda, writes, one of the things that I would want for Star Wars is to change, is to really begin to feel more comfortable stepping out of their comfort zone and really try to do a lot of different things, especially if it's been presented at Celebration, still remains to be true, and then it looks like we're already getting a sense of what the galaxy is like when we're not always fixated on the Skywalkers. Another thing to change is that Lucasfilm, and you may disagree with me here, but Lucasfilm really needs to try to be so much better when it comes to bringing out the news, because I'm tired of some people in the fandom acting like their own forecasters when they don't have all the facts together, and it causes a lot of confusion on what's really going on. That's probably just me. No, it's not just you. I think that Disney and Lucasfilm need to figure out which way they're going to go with all of this. Either keep things close to the chest and not give us every single detail and background on every single person that's involved in a project, or be more open and honest about what's going on. I think scarcity is key to Star Wars, and I probably would not have said that about a year ago, but now I do. The less we know about the individual driving forces behind the creative content, I think the better off we will be as viewers, and the less controversy they will be that there will be around them. Now, it doesn't change the fact that I think that Star Wars really needs to have some type of singular vision and driving force behind the storytelling. But it is to say that this is when the movie's coming out. Here's the director. Let's move forward. Here's a promo, here's a teaser, let's move forward. We don't need to know the background. I mean, you can tell us who's doing the score and who's writing it, but we don't need to get into the nuances of it. And maybe after they're released, I enjoy the gallery series and the making-ofs and all that after the film comes out. But prior to the film, less is more, man. Just tell us what the story is, give us a snippet of it, and let's move forward. Last one this week. Hey, John, I'm glad you're doing well. This comes from Eliza Rodriguez. In my opinion, I was never excited for either Boba Fett or Kenobi. I thought it was a stupid idea to make both shows, but I was pleasantly surprised by both. I also don't understand the criticism of Kenobi when people say it looks like a TV show when you know it's a TV show. I do understand they want Star Wars to be cinematic, so I get that. No, I understand it's a TV show, but when you compare it, in my opinion, to something like The Mandalorian is a TV show, but it looks a lot better than Kenobi did. I think that's more of what I'm personally driving at. All right, before we wrap things up, treat yourself, a friend or a family member. If you're a reader and you like science fiction, I hope you will go and pick up my EMBARK science fiction space opera series. Written for adults in the vein in terms of content of Star Wars, but it's great for kids ages 11 plus. Available in hardcover, paperback, and audiobooks. 7 books in the series available right now. EMBARK Book 1, Keitha Morrow is about to discover her past holds the key to humanity's future. Unaware that an industrial accident inside of one of the largest manufacturers of civilian and military spacecraft has set off a catastrophic chain of events, Keitha receives a cryptic message from her aerospace engineer father who died 1 year earlier. As the global evacuation begins with the help of fellow pilot Taft Guardia, she makes a shocking discovery. When war erupts, realizing the significance of what she's found, Keitha can't escape her destiny. While Earth's evacuees stand upon the brink of annihilation, Keitha, Taft, and a ragtag squadron of pilots might be humanity's greatest hope for survival among the stars. If you like your science fiction space opera epic filled with romance and action, then EMBARK is perfect for you. Available right now on Amazon.com. Search for EMBARK, Jon Justice, or at mynerdworld.net. All right. Thank you so much for checking out the show this week. I'm off to go see Elvis, finally. Very much looking forward to going and watching that film. We will be back next week for another My Nerd World, a Star Wars show. Until then, I hope wherever you are happy, you are healthy, and you are safe. Talk to you next week. Bye.
The Force will be with you. Always.
My Nerd World.